everyone to this overview of the StreamInput, one of the newer working groups in the Khronos Group. I'm Erik Noreke. I'm the chair of OpenSLES working group and also the OpenXL working group. StreamInput is a new type of input API. What we're looking at in the industry is a lot of various types of inputs, emerging input devices, array devices, cameras, text inputs, and as devices are becoming more and more complicated, so are the input devices and the applications that take use of them. The biggest problem we're seeing is that there's no standard or widespread standard today for how to get access to these input devices. When we look at input devices today, we see keyboards, mice, trackpads. We see on mobile devices, the touch screens are becoming more and more popular. In the future, we can see a lot more variety of input devices becoming available on devices. We're going to see multi-axis motion and position sensors, depth sensing cameras, haptic devices, microphone arrays to position according to sound, and biometric sensors. The biggest problem that we run into when we look at all these sensors are the multi-platform issues. With the varying number of platforms out there, different types of devices, we're also going to see many different types of input devices, not just by the type of input they do, but also by the manufacturer and how they're hooked up to the operating system. So we expect them to function completely differently if they're working on an embedded system, a mobile system, or a stationary system. Input devices such as depth sensing cameras that try to figure out how far away something is make these problems even more of a challenge. So that when we're trying to deal with these sensors, how do you define the input? How do you figure out what the device is actually trying to tell me? So what we're doing in the StreamInput working group is we're trying to redefine how we input from a device. We're trying to take a look at how do you define a device independent of how it's actually sensing the input, and how do you find a device without actually knowing what kind of input data it's going to have. How do you handle adding and removal of devices at the same time, or dynamically during the operation? So what we're trying to do is take a look at the metadata about the devices. How do you represent a device? How do you represent input? How is the application going to need to define filtering and data conversion? When you get into the virtual input devices, how are they going to work? And the most important thing is that no matter how you do these things, you need to be able to define them independent of the operating system so that it lends itself to easy portability of applications. So when we look at the StreamInput concepts, we're looking at doing a graph-based API. So the application can set up a graph of input device nodes. So you take your input devices, you plumb that information into the filter nodes, and using the filter nodes, you can filter out the types of data that you want. By using a universal timestamp for the input devices, you can correlate various types of input devices to get a whole new picture of the reality that the device is located in. We also have to make sure that when we do build up our filter graphs or our node graphs, that we can extend them with new nodes, new data types, and new input devices as they become available. For instance, when doing input, I might be looking to do Unicode text input. I really don't care how that is input. You might be using a touch screen, you might be using voice recognition or a traditional keyboard. What I'm really interested in, I want Unitext input. I might be wanting to get a 3D skeletal representation, and I really don't know how the device gets that input. And those are the questions that the StreamInput working group are looking at and trying to solve with this new API. There's quite a few companies in Khronos who are interested in working with StreamInput, and this is the current group of companies that are working. And they are working, or the working group is trying to complete the first version and specification by September 2012. That is the goal that the working group has set for itself. So, with that short introduction, are there any questions? Okay, thank you.